It's the year of the contract backs. Half of the running backs on this list are playing for a new contract next season, which could be both a good and a bad thing for us fantasy players. But really quick, if you enjoy what you're listening to at any point, please support us down below. Drop a like. Most importantly, subscribe to the channel as we're on the way to 300 subs. It would be absolutely crazy if we got there. Again, we appreciate any and all support. But enough of that. Let's get down to business. Let's get into the top 10 running backs for your fantasy football teams this season. We're going to start our list here at number 10 with Kenneth Walker, and I'm going to start this by saying that I've already moved him down a couple spots, but just for the sake that I haven't talked about him yet, he'll be here at my number 10 spot. The reasons why I've moved him down is there's close to no receiving upside, as we've seen last year, and not to mention this team added a slot receiver in JSN. They also added a second-round running back in Zach Charbonnet, who is known as a receiving back coming out of college, joining this offense, and if you're drafted in the second round, the team plans to use you, right, especially early on. You know, I don't think that Ken Walker is going to be that workhorse that we wanted to see coming into this season with the additions that they've had, but the potential is always there because from week 6 to 17 last season, Ken Walker was the running back 8, right? Overall, he was running back 9 in points per game. He averaged about 16.5 a game, right? And his draft position last year, his ADP, made him a draft day steal. You know, this year you're going to have to pay up a little bit more as he's like in that 4th, 5th round range, but he's still going to be a running back 1 in that Seattle offense. Not to mention, he's going to have all of the red zone work. You know, Zach Charbonnet might take the catching, but Ken Walker's still going to be that red zone guy that they always look towards. You know, and with all that being said, to me, Ken Walker's still a low-end RB1, RB2 for me this season. I just have a couple guys. I just moved him down 2 or 3 spots. My number 9 spot is going to be Derrick Henry. And we overlooked the King last season. You know, plain and put, you know, he finished as the overall RB4 with about 18.5 points per game. He also finished second in carries, third in rushing yards, while also posting career highs in targets, receptions, and yards per route run. You know, for everything that we thought wouldn't happen for Derrick Henry last year, it did, plus some. You know, the offensive situation, even though it was very poor last year, it did not affect his fantasy numbers, and that was also coming off of a foot injury that he had on the second half of the 21 season, right? So coming off of a foot injury into a bad offensive situation was why we stayed away. He came out and he was still that number 1 workhorse running back with the shaky O-line, with too much, you know, with the poor quarterback play. We all thought it was too much to overcome, and that bet didn't go well, right? He's still an RB1, but this year, we have the same worries as last year. He still has a shaky O-line, still has a questionable quarterback room. You know, Derrick Henry's only getting older. Is the mileage finally going to catch up to him with all the career work that he's had? Is this the year? I don't believe so. And if it is, he's still an RB1. He's still going to be running back 9 on the season. Maybe, if you're lucky, you can grab him as your running back 2 this year. My number 8 is going to be Tony Pollard, and he's going to be the first back on this list that it is a contract year. Tony Pollard, whether if it's Dallas or somewhere else, he's playing for a big contract this offseason. He's coming off of his best career year, outshining Zeke and finishing as the RB7, despite ranking outside the top 25 in touches per game at the running back position. From week 7 to 16, Tony Pollard scored more fantasy points than any other running back with about 19.5 per game. That's what you want on your team week in and week out, no doubt, right? This team went on to cut Zeke, like we mentioned, and they added no competition. Tony Pollard is set for a big year, but the only negatives, and this is going to sound silly, I know, but is his body going to be ready for a full workload this season? Is he going to be ready for that workhorse running back role? You know, it's completely different on your body going from a utility back to the back, right? And Zeke took a lot of that, the tough hits last season. Is Tony Pollard and his body going to be ready? Again, I know it's silly to have that worry, but all in all, he's still going to be an RB1 with huge PPR upside. My number 7 is going to be Nick Chubb, a guy who's coming off of the quietest 1,500-yard season in recent memory. Oh, not to mention 5 yards a carry, a career-high 13 touchdowns from Nick Chubb last year. And from weeks 1 to 12, Nick Chubb was the running back 4 overall in points per game. On the flip side, though, when Deshaun Watson did return, he was the RB23 from weeks 13 to 17. So that's something we have to worry about but I don't think that dramatic change is going to carry over into the new year as he has a full season with Deshaun Watson. And I believe Watson, just the talent that he is, it's likely just going to boost the overall offensive efficiency. And to me, that makes Nick Chubb a near bust-proof pick here on draft day with his track of consistency in his career, right? But nothing has shown that Kevin Stefanski won't lean on the run like he has in years past. With running the ball as much as he has, it would preserve Deshaun Watson's arm for the playoffs, and that's always important, right? Your quarterback is always the most important position. But if anything, Nick Chubb's only going to get more passing work this season if it is a more pass-friendly offense. As Kareem is out the door, we do have to worry a little bit about Jerome Ford. But I think Nick Chubb, he's shown last year he can have passing production right out of the backfield, and I believe he's also still going to be that monster on the ground. He's no doubt an RB1 for me this season. There's just a couple guys that have a little bit more upside here in 2023. My number 6 is going to be a guy who going into the drafts last year I loved, and that is one Josh Jacobs. He finished as the overall RB2 with that cheap draft price that he had last season. He was the full-blown workhorse last season, and we're going to be expecting a lot of the same this year. He's on a contract year. He's going to be playing for a big contract, whether if it's with the Raiders or elsewhere. He's going to have to come out and he's going to be playing for some of that generational money. He led the league in touches and rushing yards last season. Not to mention they brought in a new quarterback, and Jimmy Garoppolo loves to check down, more so than Derek Carr at least, right? So Jimmy Garoppolo's only going to give more passing upside here for Josh Jacobs in 2023. And I believe he's still going to be that RB1, just with a slight decline from 2 to 6 here in 2023. My number 5, look, I'm buying into the hype. Bijan Robinson comes in my number 5 spot. He was the number 8 draft pick in the real-life draft coming out of Texas, going to the Atlanta Falcons. He is this year's new shiny toy that everybody wants. He's, these new rookies, they're very boom or bust. Is he going to be on the level of a Saquon Barkley in his first year? Or is he going to be on the level of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? That sounds disrespectful, but both of those guys were drafted in the first round, and both had completely different results. What is your belief in Bijan for this season? He's a guy that ran for 1,500 yards and 20 touchdowns in his last year at Texas. He has that rare combination of speed, strength, good hands even. He's an explosive runner, but he's a sneaky receiver there at the same time. Not to mention he's joining Arthur Smith's running-heavy offense that last year had the best-rated offensive line per PFF. Not to mention he's joining a young quarterback in Desmond Ridder. And you guys know what I love to say about young quarterbacks. They love to check down. They love to get the ball out quick and efficiently. The best way to do that is to your running back and to your big-body tight end. Bijan can have a monster year on the ground and through the air here for the Atlanta Falcons. The only worry that I have is that it might take him until the second half of the year to really be that full-blown workhorse back, because they still do have Tyler Algier, who had a good year last year. They still have Cordero Patterson, who had a good year last year. I think we have to worry about the running back committee there, but I think come second half of the year, Bijan will take off. My 3B, you see it correctly, but let's point out the elephant in the room. And that's that Jonathan Taylor underperformed last year after being the consensus number 1 running back. And, for me personally, I took the safer quote-unquote pick in Jonathan Taylor over Christian McCaffrey last year because Christian McCaffrey burned me in the past. And now what do I get last year? I get Jonathan Taylor, who burned me this past year. But I expect a bounce back year. In all fairness, I expect a bounce back year, especially with Anthony Richardson at the helm. I said it last pick here with Bijan Robinson, but there is a young quarterback in Indy. Young quarterbacks love to check down, get the ball out quick and efficiently. Jonathan Taylor should get a lot of that passing work in 2023. Shane Steichen is going to be the new head coach. He's coming over from Philadelphia, in which he had an offense where Miles Sanders had 13 touchdowns on the ground. Right? And Miles Sanders, don't get me wrong, he's a very talented back, but he's not Jonathan Taylor. So this is going to be a run-heavy offense in Indy, with a young quarterback who loves to check down. I'm expecting a bounce-back year on the way for sure for Jonathan Taylor. And with all that being said, he is set for a huge year in fantasy football, maybe back to his production 2 years ago. But just to play it safe, I'm going to have him at my number 3B. And moving over here to my 3A, it's going to be Saquon Barkley. He was finally healthy last year, and he was able to play like we know he can, like the talent that he is. Last year, he finished as the running back 5 overall, and he was able to recapture some of those explosive plays, with the upside plays that we saw both as a rusher and a receiver. He finished second in overall touches. He scored 10 touchdowns within the 10-yard line. So he's getting the touches outside of the red zone and inside the red zone, which is something we love to see from a workhorse running back. In 2021, 2 years ago, he had only 13 total red zone touches. So the new coaching staff, they're utilizing him to his fullest potential. And, let his return to glory last year prove to you that you need to target these young, impending free agent running backs in improved offensive situations with that you project to earn high volume production the following year. Like I just mentioned, he's in a contract year. He's no doubt a top 3 back this season in fantasy football. You just have to bet. Are we going to see the 2021 version of Saquon or the 2022 new and improved Brian Daboll version of Saquon Barkley? My number 2, and we're going to start here with a big announcement. As before I'm recording this show, Austin Ekeler, it has been announced that he's going to stay with Los Angeles this season. He will not be traded, and he will hit free agency in 2024. With that being said, he's another running back that is on a contract year. He's playing for a big contract, whether that's with LA or a different ball club. But Austin Ekeler, he's been amazing. No player has scored more touchdowns over the last 2 years than Mr. Ekeler. The Chargers red zone machine, he scored 18 touchdowns, 5 receiving, 13 rushing a year after scoring 20 touchdowns in 2021. So, when you score 38 touchdowns here in a span of 2 years, it's very hard to beat that, and that's obviously great for our fantasy football teams. He led all running backs in receptions and targets, as we know that's his specialty. Not to mention Kellen Moore is now the new OC in this Chargers offense, and he was the great mind behind Tony Pollard having a career year there in Dallas. So that's only going to add more production, more upside here for Austin Ekeler in 2023. Ekeler, he was fully unlocked as a receiver last year with the injuries to Keenan Allen, with the injuries to Mike Williams, who combined for a total of 13 missed games. To me, until the Chargers receivers prove they can stay healthy and play a full 17-game season, Austin Ekeler is going to be the focal point of this Los Angeles Charger offense, especially if he's on a contract year, especially if these injuries continue to happen. He's still going to be a very productive, high-volume running back that you want on your fantasy teams in 2023. My number 1 spot, and of course I'm going to start this with the year I didn't take the risk, the absolute best happened for Christian McCaffrey, as last year he was traded from the Panthers to the 49ers midseason. Of course, he had no injuries all year, and that's the reason I stayed away from him, as he's burned me in the past. But look, he went for 40-plus points in just his second game in a 49er uniform. He led all running backs in scoring from weeks 8 to 17, averaging about 20.5 points a game, which can single-handedly win you your weeks in fantasy football. He averaged nearly 20 touches a game. The production, the volume is there, and even in the stacked 49ers offense, I believe a healthy CMC will be the focal point of it, especially with how much they want to run the ball. And the questions at the quarterback position, well, if it's Brock Purdy or whether if it's Trey Lance, both of those guys are probably going to give the ball to Christian McCaffrey more, check down the ball more, and so his production is guaranteed. I believe he's the safest running back this season. The only thing we have to worry about is his health, and that's always going to be a constant worry for Christian McCaffrey, as he's the running back version of Lamar Jackson. Just to recap here, my 10 through 1, my top 10 running backs on the season. As my number 10, again, I said that I've already moved him down a couple spots. I just wanted to talk about him here on today's show. But Ken Walker, my number 10 back, as I believe Ramondre or Breece Hall might be in this spot now. But regardless, Ken Walker, very talented back. We talked about him earlier. But my 9 through 6 goes as follows. We have King Henry, Tony Pollard, Nick Chubb, and Josh Jacobs. My 5 through 1, I'm betting on the upside of Bijan at 5. My 3A and 3B is Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor. And my 1 and 2 goes to Christian McCaffrey at my number 1 spot and Austin Ekeler at my number 2. Let me know what you guys think down below, and also support us down below. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, comment. Let me know what you think about the list, as we're approaching 300 subs, and we can't get there without your support. So go ahead and support us. Share the podcast as well, because if you enjoy it, I'm guarantee your best friend will as well. But that's going to do it for today's show. We'll be back tomorrow with our first ever NBA mock draft here on the channel. My co-host will be back, as I typically do these fantasy ones alone. But he'll be back tomorrow. We're going to have an NBA mock draft on the channel. Can't be more excited, all right? So if you want to check that out, tune back in tomorrow. Subscribe to the channel so you can get those alerts. And until then, we're out.